What's going on, guys? So now that I'm running the Dinger Build exhaust and the man-in-the-box intake, it's highly recommended to run a fuel controller. Since it's already running pretty lean from the factory, and I don't want to risk blowing up my motor just because I wanted to cheap out. So I'm running the Bazzaz with their Autotune feature. So all I have to do is put the O2 sensor in, ride it around, and it'll be good to go. So the first thing that we want to do is hit the bike with a mallet so the plastics fall off automatically. Hopefully it works. Much better. Now that we have some room to work, we're gonna start running the wires and get this thing installed. And before we get started, some bikes came with a charcoal canister back in this area right here. If your bike has that, you are going to want to remove that. We will link a video once it comes out up in the top right, so you can do that beforehand if your bike has it. One thing I like to do before I get started is move this fuse block, just so it gives us more room to have the ECU and the ZFI. Just have it tucked up right up in there, in that area, so you can put the ECU and then the ZFI underneath it without having issues. And before I get too far into it, make sure you read your instructions manual. There's no way what we say is the gospel. It's just how we interpret it and kind of give you a better visual of how to actually install it. So make sure you actually read this thing. It has a lot of good information. So you got two ends of the harness. This end is gonna go down in this area, and then this side goes up into here, and that's where your your new Bazzaz ECU is gonna sit, as well as plug into your ZFI. So we're gonna run it up through kind of where we did that. I'm just gonna wanna run it up into this area. I'm not gonna bore you with how I run it up here. I'll just show you once I'm done with it. All right, so this is how I'm gonna have it set up. I have the ZFI kind of wedged underneath this bar. I also have the AFM plugged in, and the connector is back up under here. And I have the power unplugged still, and the ground. I will do that last, just so I know that I don't have any current in the system. And for the ZFM, I have this cable going to go down to the O2 sensor down this way. I'm probably just going to double-sided tape this to that, just so I can see the indicator light on the Bazzaz, and on the AFM I can see that little light, and then still plug in on the back side of there. All right, next up is to plug in your speed sensor wires, and this is kind of hard to explain where you need to go with it, but I'm gonna try. You see that blue plug down there, kind of where my middle finger is? It's way down there. You want to run it through that little hole behind this rubber booted connectors. I'll show you where it drops out at. All right, I ran those wires down, and now the fun part of actually plugging them in. It's kind of a pain in the butt, especially if you have big hands like I do. Good luck. So I pulled everything out just to make it a little bit easier to visualize how you plug everything in. So this blue connector is on the sensor normally. And you're gonna plug it into the female end. Yeah, it only goes into one way. So that plugs in, and then this connector is the fun one to try to plug back onto that sensor. And once you have everything plugged in, you should see a black connector and black and pink wires coming out of that sensor instead of the blue connector. And then just another angle. This is kind of just set on top of where the sensor used to be. Next up to plug in, we have these 4 connectors that need to go into this black boot right there. And this is pretty simple. It's just the two wire connector, unplug it, and then also the 6-pin connector. And you just jump them back, so match them up. And oops, sorry for shaking it. Plug that back in, and then for the tube connector, I believe this is your neutral connector, so it knows when you're in neutral. There you go, and then we're going to tidy everything back up now, so we can still try to fit everything in that boot. And there it is. I just took off the crankcase breather hose just so you guys can see it a little bit better. Yeah, it's all tucked up in there. Looks OEM. Now we just have this one last wire to install. First, we're going to do the easy one on the injector. Just this gray, sorry for blocking it, that connector. Kind of twist it back, plug it into the black side of the harness. I'm going to run the gray connector back up through, plug it in. That's in. Kind of tuck it up. And now I'm going to reshoot so I can put this wire on. Next, we're going to unplug the throttle position sensor wire right here. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. You might need to cut this wire, this sheathing back a little bit so it gives you a little bit more room. I'm going to do that real quick. Now that we have it exposed, you're going to want to go for the yellow and white wire. It should be the middle one. And then you're going to want to put this, I forget the name of it, the Scotch lock. There it is. You just take this gray section off, put it over the wire. Can't see, put it over that wire and it twists, and then it's got that little pin and it kind of pierces the wire and still gets the signal. So I'll do that real quick. All right, I got it plugged back in. It's on there and kind of wired up, or kind of tucked up away. We have the injector wires plugged in over here. And this side is good. All you gotta do is hook up your power and the ground. All right, so if you're not running the AFM, you can run this with the stock sniffer like I am now, but you will need to use the supplied O2 stabilizer, which you will just plug in line into this connector here, plug in each end, and you'll be good to go. But you won't have that Autotune functionality, which is actually really nice. So what I'm just gonna do is remove my O2 sniffer, unplug it from there, and discard of it. And then I'm gonna plug in the Bosch unit into my header, and I'm gonna run the wire up into where the AFM is. And this is kind of how I ran it. So I have the O2 sensor coming up from here. It's behind the clutch. It's all plugged in back here, going into that extension cable, which is actually tucked really well up behind through here. And if you see this screw right here, I took that out and kind of wedged it back behind there, and you might be able to see right on that corner right there. I ran the wire up into here, and it's actually right behind there, all coiled up, and I'll get a shot from up there too. So you can see that wire coming up here, and there's my AFM, and you can kind of see the little LED right there. And I actually decided to put it next to it since it kind of held this into place a little bit better. And all I got to do is connect the ground cable, which is tucked up under there for right now, to there. Then this wire needs to be pinched into, there it is, into this wire onto the power, which I will find out here in a second. So if you read your instructions right, it says to grab the red wire from your taillight, but I don't have a red wire. I got black, yellow, blue, and brown, white. So what am I supposed to tie this into? Well, I'm going to use my multimeter here. And I have the key on right now, I believe. Nope, it is off. I'm going to grab the brown white, turn it on, and it shows 13 volts. And if I turn it off, and then, so if I went to the blue wire, it's got nothing. But once I press the brake, I'm probably going to block it, I got power. So I don't want that one. And I don't want the black yellow. So I'm going to use the brown white one and tap it with this Scotch lock, whatever it's called. So the last thing to do now that everything's plugged in is to turn the bike on. You should see the Bazzaz light up. And then you will, once you actually start it, you will see lights coming out of the Z AFR. Yep. So once you see it flashing green, it means it's ready to start, or it's actually working. And you have a full list of what everything's doing in your owner's manual. Also, while we're back in this area, this is going to be a key function for me, since I am going to be running two different exhausts and my race exhaust is probably gonna flow way better than my quiet dinger build exhaust. So you have one map this way, and then if you unplug it, you have a second map. You could, if you really wanted to, make it your own switch to turn it on and off to open and close this circuit for map 1 and 2, or you can pay almost $80 for the Bazzaz map button, but all it is a switch to open and close the circuit. Well guys, crap. Where's my mallet? Ugh. Huh. If only it worked in real life. But that wraps it up, guys. No, there's only one thing we have left to do.
So I had a check engine light I couldn't get rid of, took this off, put electrical tape in there. I don't think I have a check engine light anymore. Do you think I do?
Yeah, you have to put a little electrical tape over the check engine light because it doesn't apparently go out. Some say it does, some say it doesn't. Well, we may never know. But if you are interested in picking up a Bazzaz, I'll leave a link to MNNTHBX down in the description. And if you are looking to learn how to actually tune the bike, we will be making a video in the future, and I'll make sure to leave it up there. And at the end of the video, I'll put a card for it. So that's it. We'll see you next time.